Draft presser, GM John Spytek was asked specifically about drafting the Boise State running back. Take a listen.
Ashton Jeanty, we talked about in that top 10 by pretty much everybody who's put together mock drafts. What do you think about him in particular makes him so special to where he might be warranted one of those picks?
I'm going to be careful about talking about any specific player, but more broadly to the running back question, I mean, we just saw Saquon Barkley just change the Eagles in one year. Now they had a great team around him, and it was adding an elite player. And I think when you sit where we sit, I mean, the idea is to add elite players at any position.
Yeah, there's a lot there to take in.
I think I really do. I think if I said this last week, if I was general manager, here's who I would take. And I think once you committed to Geno Smith and Chip Kelly, it makes drafting Ashton Jeanty redeemable because Geno is a very capable quarterback on play action. Translation, solid run game. Well, the Raiders have no run game. So you got to solve that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they get Ashton Jeanty in the first round, and in the 5th or 6th round, they go get another back.
Yeah.
So Geno Smith is 2 quarterbacks. There is time to throw with a prominent run game, Geno, and this is a little Sam Darnold too. And then there is frenetic throwing on 3rd and long, and then Sam and Geno become really ordinary players. So this, to me, is not just about solving running back. It's elevating Geno Smith, who you're in a relationship with for probably 2 years.
Yeah. So I'm sure actually a lot of Raiders fans probably did not watch a lot of Geno Smith, and I understand. I mean, majority of fans just watch their own team, and so you probably didn't really see a ton of Geno Smith. But let me tell you that Geno Smith is actually a lot better than people give him credit for. He's obviously had a late run at his career. Which also then makes it harder to kind of really evaluate and figure out what's going on because there's that kind of feeling of like, oh, did he just have like a good year or a couple good years? Was he in a good situation? But like, if you build a good enough team around Geno Smith, like you are going to win games. Am I going to tell you that Geno Smith's going to, elevate a team from good to like elite or good to great, put him on your back and he's going to go out there and just start, winning games like he's, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or Mahomes? Like, no. But he can win, and he can get in some of these, games where you're balling, right? Where it's a tough game. Like I look at the Bucks Commanders game, for instance, in the playoffs, and that was like, there was many moments in that game when it was like, man, anything can happen right now. Anything can happen. And sometimes you have a quarterback, you have a team where the feeling is kind of like, yeah, anything can happen, but like we don't know how to win a game like that, where we don't have a quarterback that can actually really get that job done. And Geno Smith is that type of quarterback that can get that job done. He can win that game if he was on the Commanders or the Bucks, right? And so like that is the type of quarterback that you're getting with Geno Smith. Like I said, are you now good enough to now go march into Philly and beat the Eagles? Like, no. But that's why, right? Like they're kind of talking about now, it's like we got to kind of add elite players at any position. And the Eagles, I get the comparison, and this isn't what Spytek was necessarily saying, but like, it was just like, you can't just be like, okay, the Eagles just added Saquon and that was it. No, they added Kellen Moore, they added Fangio, they added Cooper DeJean, they added Mitchell, they added CJ Gardner-Johnson. You know what I mean? Like they added a lot of pieces here. They replaced their retiring, out of gas center with a new, young, fresh, ready to go, ready to eat, haven't won a Super Bowl center, right? Like they added many pieces to that team. And it wasn't just Saquon Barkley, although Saquon Barkley was massive, obviously. But it was more than just that. They also had a ton of continuity because they literally just went to the Super Bowl in 22 without Saquon Barkley, with 2 completely different coordinators, with a different O-line, with a different defense. A couple of the defensive players, retired as well. So you can't. The Eagles are just not the best. The best comparison. It's not like that they were just kind of winning, kind of drumming along, and then they just added Saquon Barkley. No, they added an elite top defensive coordinator in the NFL. One of the best defensive minds, arguably, to ever coach. You add him, and that defense got absolutely positively transformed. transformed. They knocked it out of the park with 2 great draft picks on defense and free agency, getting key pieces, turning a player into an all-pro that was pretty much like no one really thought that he was worth anything. So like, and they added obviously Saquon Barkley. They had the continuity of A.J. Brown, Devontae, Jalen Hurts. So there was still a tremendous amount of continuity there. So it's just different. It's just different. You're not going to just add Ashton Jeanty and now just be like, boom, Super Bowl contender. And I don't think that the Raiders believe that. And I know that's not what the GM's saying. He's pretty much kind of saying the opposite, right? He's referencing the Eagles, but he's just kind of like, they had a lot of special players, kind of all over the place, which is accurate. Which is why, he's kind of saying the idea is to add an elite player at any position. And it's true. It's true. And yeah, I kind of go back and forth on all of this. Here's the thing that I'll say, and I may have said this in a previous video, but like, I just think, the Raiders are right there because the Raiders are they keep being talked about now. And no one talked about the Raiders last year. They just didn't. You had to really fight. And in the offseason going into this season, into last season, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about. There just really wasn't. And so now the fact that the Raiders are consistently being talked about just shows you how much juice they have. And that is where an exciting pick like an Ashton Jeanty can go a long way. But it's up to the Raiders to decide what can they do with their O-line. How can they manage that? What do actually Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll want? What are they seeing? Because there's very much the possibility that you go out and you kind of have a similar draft to Harbaugh and the Chargers as last season. Not a lot of these big splash moves, but they were able to grind out, be a defensive-led team, have high quarterback play, win some games, got to the playoffs, right? I think they won like 5 games the year before. They doubled that, boom, in the playoffs. They were a bottom team in the playoffs. Now, they got beat pretty good in the playoffs, and their O-line, crumbled because it was a welcome to the NFL moment and going up against a great defense. But that obviously worked for them, and that could be a path for the Raiders as well. But it could also be a different move. It could also be, no, we have a really smart offensive coordinator. We have a dynamic quarterback in Geno Smith. Pete Carroll is going to get this defense going. We can go out and get Ashton Jeanty. People were angry at the Bears. In hindsight, they were like, oh, they went out and got flashy weapons in the draft when they should have drafted the O-line. And Colin kept, referring to Harbaugh, actually, as an example. And it's a fair comparison. I mean, it is. It's fair. It's not necessarily wrong. But you had questionable offensive coordinator, questionable head coach, good defensive mind, but questionable head coach, as well as a rookie quarterback. If you had more experienced defensive head coach and a higher quality offensive coordinator and just a more experienced quarterback, there's a great chance that you make the playoffs. I mean, you beat the Packers, you beat the Lions, you beat the Commanders. That's 3 wins right there, just like that. There's a collection of other games that you easily could have won. That was clearly just like questionable quarterback play, questionable, offensive game plan, questionable just overarching head coaching. Like, what are you doing? Are your players ready to play or not? And the defense fell apart, especially once they fired Eberflus. So both teams could have found their way to make the playoffs, and had different ways. You can't just say, oh, if the Bears had a better O-line, then boom, they make the playoffs. It's like, it's not always that cut and dry. And there's not always just one path to get there. And right now, the Raiders need to be stabilized. That's what they're looking for. And I argue You got that stabilization through Pete Carroll and through Geno Smith, and by extension, Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly has to kind of, reintegrate himself into the NFL to truly be like he's a stabilizing factor. I believe he will, but you do have to wait and see. I think that's fair. But that is already the stabilization. Now you add a workhorse like Ashton Jeanty and a competent defense, a competently coached defense with like a true identity and true game plans both offensively and defensively, and knowing how to coach and put players in positions to succeed when you are down by 3 with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, something that the Raiders have not been, they've just really been flying by the seam of their pants in those moments. You now have the coaching on both sides of the ball to know, okay, guys, we know how to we know how to handle these games. I've actually prepared you in practices for these moments. We know we've actually gone through the reps because we have experienced coaching. We have a coach who's been in this situation literally 10,000 times throughout his life. Like, those things matter. So I trust Pete Carroll's football knowledge. And, the truth is, you don't know how much pull he has in this moment of time with the Raiders organization. So, man, I would love to hear those conversations between because Chip Kelly's involved too. Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll, and Spytek. And I guess even maybe Brady too, to a degree. Again, it's hard to really know how some of these conversations are happening, who's managing who has more power in any given moments. I shouldn't say power, like more pull. Someone where they're really kind of like, hey, going to defer to you in this moment. But I'm excited to see actually the decision they make more than the draft pick itself, if that makes sense. Because it's going to just kind of give us continue to give us more clarity as to what exactly the Raiders believe they can do this season and what they're looking to do moving into the future. So I'm excited. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Las Vegas Raiders kind of still bouncing back, and at least via the media? Who are they going to draft? Ashton Jeanty, someone else? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.